Hey, thanks for tuning in to another NationSwell Google Hangout featuring a national service opportunity. This is featuring the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, and I'm very lucky to be joined by three different members of the Jesuit Volunteer Corps family, all of them actually JVs in their past, and we'll talk about their experience. But to kick things off, Colleen, can you tell us about your role with JVC and give us a little bit more background on the JVC mission?
Sure. Thanks, Kat. First, I wanted to say thanks for the opportunity for JVC to be partnering with you guys in this important movement. I am a former volunteer. 25 years ago, I served the year after I graduated from college in North Philadelphia, where I ran an after-school program for a grade school. And so now I serve as Director of Advancement for JVC. And regarding our mission statement reads, aspiring to create a more just and hopeful world. The Jesuit Volunteer Corps engages passionate young people in vital service within poor communities, fostering the growth of leaders committed to faith and action. And what's distinct about that approach is that we're rooted in the Catholic Jesuit tradition. We believe that the JVC experience can transform both the individual volunteer and the community through our partner agencies. And we're really dedicated to the volunteer experience and its impact.
Great. So getting into that impact, can we talk, Marissa, I'd love to hear a little bit more about, you're working in public interest law in LA right now, and I know your experience with the JVC was a big part of that path. So can you take us through your story coming out of college, working with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, and, ending up in the role you're in now, how that's kind of an example of this putting faith into action through service?
Sure. So I did JVC in Atlanta right after I graduated from college, and I worked at Georgia Legal Services Program Farm Worker Division. So I was mostly working with contracted H-2A farm workers, and I was working as a paralegal. And I knew going into JVC I had a really strong interest in doing public interest law, and it was just a really extraordinary experience because I was able to work pretty much every day with clients and, not only gain legal knowledge, but, to your point about faith in action, I think there's nothing greater than working in service with others and understanding their stories. My family comes from Mexico. All of my clients, had family in Mexico, were from Mexico, so sharing that story about being in this country and the dignity of work, which I think is really something that's an underlying value for all JVs that you experience. And so carrying that into what I do now, I am a civil rights attorney. I mostly do wage and hour class action. So I work with low-wage workers, monolingual Spanish speakers on a daily basis. And, you see this, there's this large movement about a higher minimum wage, right? And what that comes down to is dignity in people's work and the respect. And I think that really goes to really seeing the spirituality and seeing God and other people and honoring that and respecting that. And so for me, the seed was planted and it really grew in my placement in Georgia and Atlanta. And, and now being able to do that every day, it's a really extraordinary opportunity to be able to do that and to work with workers and to continue to hear their stories and be of service to them. So it's definitely something that continues and flourishes, I think, after your JV year.
That's great to hear. It's always fun in these hangouts we do with alums of these service programs to hear how that service experience shaped their path, which is definitely the case for you. So this kind of points to the variety of experiences that JVC offers. Connor is joining us from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and working in a physical education program, so a very different experience from Marissa. Connor, can you tell us about your JVC placement? And it looks like we're catching you at school. That looks like a name tag there, maybe.
Yep.
Can you tell us about your day-to-day?
Sure. So I'm teaching 9th grade physical education at Cristo Rey Jesuit High School in beautiful Minneapolis, Minnesota. And my day-to-day experience is very, very interesting. I'm thinking about like the 4 values of JVC: simple living, community, spirituality, social justice. Those things, and how those things kind of play into my day-to-day life. And the one that is I think of most often probably is kind of social justice, because as a gym teacher, I have to use, I'm teaching different sports. Right now we're on floor hockey. Most of these kids are, Krista Ray is a primarily Hispanic population with a small population of African Americans as well. And most of these kids have never played hockey before. I come from a big hockey town in Massachusetts, so that's a little interesting for me. And when you're teaching PE, I tend to use metaphors when I'm teaching the sports, and I can't use metaphors about tennis or stuff like that. Things that, I'm very conscious of where I come from, what my privilege is of that. I have, I come from a place where I experienced all of these sports before high school, and a number of my students have not. So kind of, bringing that into it is like, thinking about social justice is myself being more conscious of where I'm from, and how what I'm doing is different from what most of my friends are doing as well. Yeah, and in terms of spirituality as well, my community comes from a number of different places. I'm from Massachusetts, like I said. There are two people in my community from Oregon. Two people in my community from Wisconsin, one from Oregon, and one from California. So we come from a very geographically diverse places. Some of us are Catholic, some of us are not. Some of us went to Catholic Jesuit schools, some of us did not. So there's an expansion as well of spirituality. I feel like I had a good base in my own spirituality when I went into JVC, and I feel like JVC has expanded that. We have a weekly spirituality night, and what that means is so open to interpretation. It's amazing. Some of my community members will lead us in a meditation. At one point, I had us listen to a stand-up comic that I thought was relevant. So it's just sort of, it's up in the air. And I think
Connor brings up a great point about the Jesuit volunteer experience, rooted in the Ignatian spirituality, and that means finding God in all things. And being a contemplative in action. So seeing that God is active in our world, in our work, in our relationships, but then also the Ignatian spirituality, like the spirituality nights, finding the process through prayer, through meditation and reflection to determine what's God asking us or calling us to do in the world.
And it does seem, I think with a lot of these groups, we've talked with the Lutheran Volunteer Corps, for example, and they emphasize they're very inclusive of all faiths, all kinds of spirituality, broadly defined. But I loved hearing Connor talking about his community, and I actually didn't realize that was the term you guys used, but it makes a lot of sense. And I think the Franklin Project at the Aspen Institute is really working toward a future where national service, a year of national service, is a civic rite of passage. And I think a big reason for that is because it creates community and it connects us. So can either Marissa or Connor, can you speak to that point in terms of why you think this experience you're having or you've had as a service member is something you hope more young Americans can work toward in the future?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that having a year of service after, as a young person is incredibly important. I think it's a really great time in your life when there's a lot of self-reflection. You finished your education, and now, you're thinking, what do I do next? And I think there's a lot of pressure to do, okay, so you have to go into like this or that or this certain profession. But it's a really excellent opportunity to be self-reflective, to be reflective within community, to be reflective about your spirituality, but also, again, as part of large, social justice movements and that part, and sharing that not just within your own community. Not, for me, it wasn't just Atlanta. It was sharing that with everybody that was in Houston or in Mobile or, all over, and having that shared mission and exploring those things together in intentional community and like really working it out, because there's a difference between, I live and I've got roommates, but living in intentional community and, really hearing other people out and having that, because I think the climate that we have right now is kind of like, I'll yell at you and you yell at me, but this is really trying to understand each other and to find that. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, more needed than ever.
Absolutely. I think, and it's also something like I'm 23, and most of my students think they know everything. They're high school kids, so they're in that kind of period of their life. But when you get to my age, you kind of realize that you actually don't know all that much. And so having that as kind of a year of service as a rite of passage is that ability to kind of get to know yourself better as well, and to bring that to the outside world. Because if you know yourself, you can't help others until you know yourself. I think that's
totally
really
agree
important.
with that. Yeah, there's so much that's gained through the experience in addition to what you contribute. So I have so many more questions for you guys, but I'm just going to wrap things up here. And Colleen, for those who do have questions, who are interested in this opportunity, or just more broadly talking about putting faith into action through service and what that means, what are next steps for people who want to learn more?
Well, we are in the application process right now for the next cohort of volunteers. Each year we have over 300 volunteers across the country in 37 cities, working at over 200 partner agencies like Cristo Rey and countless others. And the next step would be to contact us through our website, jesuitvolunteers.org. And the next application date for the August 15 cohort is in March.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for your service and for your time today.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Thank
Kat.
you.
Thank you.